So welcome to our Everything Marketplaces community workshop today, which is going to be on Marketplace SEO. So this is part 2 of 3 for our Marketplace SEO and workshop deep dive series, which is going to be covering content strategies in more detail. So today's workshop is going to be led by Mike Heijden, who previously led our Marketplace SEO 101 or general overview workshop, and then last week led part 1 of 3, which was covering link building in more detail. So I'm really excited to have Mike join us here today. And Mike, welcome, to the workshop. And thanks again for, taking the time to join us and lead it here today. And, with that said, I'll actually just let you take it over from here.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks again for having me back, obviously. Today, wanted to talk to you guys all about the content marketing strategies that we see working for online marketplaces. We'll preface this by saying, this is not an extensive list. This is not everything that's out there. This is what we're seeing working well and choosing a couple of examples to share with you so you guys can start taking action. So a little bit about me. Obviously, you've seen this slide a few times now. Been in the SEO industry myself for about 17 years now. I then founded Portal Ventures, which is now a bit of a hybrid investment / consultancy agency around SEO predominantly. I do some angel investments myself and also a strategic advisor or business advisor to a couple of marketplaces here in Australia. And so again, today's agenda, really we want to dive deep into, what is content marketing, how we, Portal Ventures or we, when we consult marketplace, look at content marketing. Then I want to take you some really good examples of good content marketing that marketplaces are currently employing. And then, as usual, there'll be a list of resources that you can go out and read and some of the tools that I'll be referencing throughout the presentation. So really, what is content marketing, right? If we look at the definition, it's really, it's a type of marketing that involves the creation and sharing of online material. And that can be videos, blogs, social media posts, anything that can be digested online, but that does not explicitly promote a brand, but is rather intended to sort of stimulate interest in your products or services. So, think about how-tos, questions, things that people are searching for at the very start of their journey. And so why do we do content marketing? Obviously, obvious reason is SEO, but it is also much more powerful than activities like press releases and social ads, because as you'll see in this graph, right, when you look at a Facebook ad or a press release, you kind of get this sudden spike and then it drops off and it's sort of not relevant. Similar to like a news site like CNN, an article will be relevant for a few hours and then it sort of dies off. Whereas if you do content marketing right, that content can sustain a lead flow throughout months, years to come, right? We've seen cases where a single piece of content, written content, actually produce more leads than their paid channels put together. So it's really, really powerful. The other thing it really does is people say, yes, we know who we're targeting, we know our customers. But when you really get down into the nitty-gritty of it, unless you've done multiple of these sort of persona exercises, it's often overlooked just how much you don't know or don't realize about your target demographic, right? So it's really crucial when you're starting to do sort of content generation that it's at a core level, you need to know who your ideal customer is, what their problems and pain points are, and how they're likely to consume your solution, your content, whether that's reading, watching videos, emails, etc. Right? Content marketing encompasses everything, but today we'll just talk about page content. So really, once we start thinking about content marketing, there's sort of 3 stages that we think through in the funnel, right? We look at the awareness layer. So it's top of funnel, or TOF for short. And it's really not designed to convert a customer into a paying loyal customer, right? But it's rather, how do I do something? You're helping someone solve a pain problem. How much does it cost to rent a recording studio in Bel Air, right? It's just a quick answer, but now you've kind of established that relationship that, hey, studio time, for example, might have answered that question. So now next time they have a question about it, they might go, studio time comes to mind, right? And so typically it's one of the very first interactions, first of many interactions. And these sort of queries and this sort of information is sort of high volume There's a lot of questions out there about topics, and you'll see that lots of marketplaces generate lots of traffic by virtue of actually just answering the user's questions around a certain topic. Next is sort of the middle of funnel, or MOF, which is sort of the interest layer, right? So now we're getting into, you've sort of created that awareness, they're sort of familiar with your brand, but now they're in sort of that decision-making process, and you should naturally be on their radar because you've created so much great content, you've been to a touch point many times. So now it's really about serving them content that can help them make better decisions between the other options, right? In SaaS, for example, you'll see this often where it's, Asana versus Basecamp, or Asana versus Jira, or alternatives, and marketplaces like G2 and Capterra come to mind, where it's just the interest layer they're targeting, option A versus option B, right? And then in the very last layer, that's the action, right? So at the bottom of the funnel, it's buy X online, buy this here, buy this there, rent this here, rent this there. So, if you're running I was talking to the guys from Motor Hunt, this is where you're going, hey, motorcycle, Harley Davidson for sale in Long Beach, California, right? And so ultimately what we're trying to do is create topical authority. It's basically a measure of the authority that you earn through the quality of your content. If you're starting a marketplace in recording studios, rentals, you want to be seen as the expert on recording studio topics, right? You want to cover anything from equipment to rentals to how to pay for it, how to run it. So ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to be seen as an expert in the eyes of Google, which in turn, Google will reward you with the relevant rankings for that particular query. And so more customers see you, yada, 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 you get the point, right? It goes down the funnel and hopefully you convert them into customers. So how we look at content marketing for online marketplaces, and this is the four most common ones that we see work really well and that aren't too difficult to execute. So there's, like I said, really there's four. We see content hubs, or hub and spoke model, or whatever you want to call that. Then what we've got is a slight variation of that called topic hubs. We've got supply side leveraged content, and then what we have is a content database, and we'll go through each of these step by step. So the content hub model, probably everyone familiar, is basically predicated on there being a topic, and then all sorts of offshoots around that particular topic, right? So if we have a look at here, guide to kites, how to fly a kite, how to make a kite videos, kite ideas, you get the idea. This is ultimately the most basic way you can start a content marketing strategy, because you take the topic off your marketplace and you just basically answer every single question that you can find about an online marketplace. A good example of this is sort of RV shares local guides. So, when you're renting an RV, you're typically not just going, okay, I'm just going to rent an RV and then be on your merry little way. You kind of want to go, what can I see in these different locations? What can I do? Where can I park, et cetera, et cetera. So RV Share has created a whole plethora of sort of explore local with RV Share, where they give you lots of information about, in this case, Birmingham's local parks, hiking, restaurants, activities, places where they can park the caravans. So super relevant content that it doesn't only answer questions that people might have about Birmingham, but also acts as sort of bottom of funnel, or even after the conversion, content that people will keep interacting with. Another example is sort of a bit closer to my experience, is Your Mechanic sort of car guides. So Your Mechanic basically has a maintenance or a repair guide for every single car make and car model, right? So why is it good? Well, you want to find out any questions around your maintenance cost, your repair cost, your maintenance schedules, commonly asked questions. Your Mechanic basically tries to aggregate this all on their pages. So, how much will my 15,000 kilometer Mercedes-Benz C200 cost? They'll have an answer for you. So again, they've taken the topic of the Mercedes-Benz and then answered every single query that sort of shoots off there. The second model that we see a lot of is sort of the topic hub model. And the topic hub model is similar to the content hub model, but it's applicable to where there is many topics, but with similar attributes, right? So taking an example like Motor Hunt again, you might look at motorcycles, you've got different brands, but they might have different colors, engine sizes, year, all that sort of stuff. You can actually start creating content around. So again, it's similar to the previous model, but with a slight twist. So you might look at this as Canva's example, right? Canva design software has done an amazing job of creating free templates. Now, free templates is nothing new, but what they have done is gone, okay, well, we realize there is templates around logos, business cards, posters, right? But then they've gone a step deeper and really learned about, well, who are creating these sort of things, right? And they've gone, okay, well, there's business cards for real estate agents, there's posters for DJs, or posters for promoters, posters for business events, right? And so they've really gone down from a template level down into the industry and subcategories. Another one is Preply's learning guides. So Preply, it's sort of like an online tutoring platform / marketplace. And what they've done is they really nail learning how to speak different languages. So in this case, they might look at learning Spanish, English, Chinese, Japanese, right? But using the language as a topic and then going, okay, the commonalities between all these languages are that, there's different situations. So there's languages for business, for kids, there's grammar, there's speaking, there's vocabulary. So you can imagine there's different uses for this, right? Grammar might be for writing. Business might be in a business setting. For kids, it might be just teaching your kids how to speak a language. So Preply really understands that people learn different languages for different reasons. And so what they've done is they've basically created content around the different scenarios in which people would learn different languages. So it works really well for them. The one that we're probably most familiar with is what we call the supply side leverage model. It basically uses data and information from your supply side, so your providers, your suppliers, your businesses that you promote, and applying the content hub model discussed earlier, but to the news or information about that particular business. So if you've got a lot of businesses like, for example, here, Tesla, you could essentially create a content hub around Tesla's news and actually start ranking for those queries despite you not being Tesla, right? So you've got Tesla rumors, reviews, stock, the different models, stats, share price, whatever. Perfect example, I think this needs no introduction, right? TripAdvisor kind of created this space back in the day, the 800-pound gorilla, often outranking most hotels for their own names and related queries. Why is it good? They've done an amazing job of curating all the information about the businesses that they have. People upload their images. As you can see, travelers have uploaded 2,200 images almost themselves. So it just reinforces the network effect that the more people that have used TripAdvisor is actually building the value of TripAdvisor. And so really all they've done is leveraged all the hotels around the world and used their own data, quote unquote, against themselves, right? Another example, but in the restaurant space, Zomato, right? Exactly replicated or replication of what TripAdvisor has done in the the accommodation space. Zomato is again leveraging business names, leveraging how people search for restaurants, like reviews, menus, opening hours, and basically outranks anyone else, and 9 times out of 10 will outrank actual restaurant websites. The last model that we sort of look at and we often see, and this usually comes at sort of later stages, but it's what we call the content database model, right? So the content database model works when you have a vast collection of data that all center around a specific topic, but can be filtered down by things like location. It basically allows people to quickly sort a whole bunch of information down to a couple of different parameters, right? So if you've got a marketplace that have a narrow focus around product or service, but can be approached from a lot of different angles of interest, like, for example, accommodation, you can attack this from, boutique hotels, family-friendly hotels, but it's essentially the same information. So perfect examples of this sort of model are sort of Uber's restaurant database, right? You think that, well, Uber is just a collection of restaurants, but what they've done is, again, similar to Zomato, used all the restaurants and then sorted them by, fast food, American food, Mexican food, Chinese food. And again, they're leveraging not just the data and really relying on the restaurant data, but they've created guides around American food, Mexican food, Chinese food, based on the information that they've obviously gotten from all the businesses that they work with. Another one is that I really like is Zola. So Zola is sort of a wedding marketplace, and they've obviously got a lot of wedding related content. It's almost endless, right? But again, a perfect example is when you look at their expert advice section, they sort their content and plethora of articles around, the commonalities of, a wedding registry, invites, planning, meals, anything that you can think of in the wedding section. They just sort that data by, commonalities. And so they can sort a lot of information and sort of distill it down into, hey, this is all the information you need to know about wedding registries, and then create some articles underneath that. So gone through them a little bit fast, giving you some great examples here. But I think the next step is really thinking about how can you, looking at your marketplace, how can you start with, right? And I just want to give you four simple steps for you to get going. Literally today, you can sit down and nut this out in the next 30 minutes. So again, what we're going to start off with is our basic content marketing toolkit. So we're going to use Google. We want to use HubSpot's free persona tool. Ahrefs we can use or not use. It's not critical. But the two tools that I can't live without when I still look at this is a tool called Answer the Public and also Ask.com. Essentially what they do is you're able to input any topic, and what they'll do is they'll aggregate and spit out commonly asked questions about that topic. And then lastly, what we've got is Surf for SEO. It's a bit of a content editor / AI tool, and we'll get to that in a second. So really, the first thing you want to do is go through all your analytics. Go through, even Google Analytics will tell you some of the information about your cohorts, right? It'll tell you things like male, female, location. And so you can go as far as interviewing your supply and demand side and really get a good understanding. And it spits out a little bit of a persona like this. And what you're going to do is every time you think about writing a piece of content, it's how is this relevant to Digital John, the marketing manager, right? How is he going to consume this content? And so an example would be, the first example here is also asked. The second example here is answer the public. And really what you're going to write down is a few seed keywords. When someone mentions your marketplace and what you do, what are the three first things that come to mind, right? Studio time, recording studios, everything marketplaces, well, it's online marketplaces. What we're going to do is we're going to plug these into the tools. So in this scenario, hey, we plug in recording studios. How much does it cost to record a song in a studio? Great question, right? What is the most famous recording studio? Think about all the content that you can generate around, which recording studios were used by the rock bands in the 80s, or which, #1 hits were used or created in different recording studios. How much is it to record in a studio in South Africa? It goes as deep as you can possibly think about. Then what we do is plug it into Answer the Public. So Answer the Public will take, for example, here, online marketplaces as a hub topic, and it will spit out questions around the why, will, who, are, what, are, when, can, which, and how. And it'll look at all of its database and try and see which ones relate to online marketplaces. So this is like your V1, your version 1, your MVP of your content strategy, right? You drop them all down, and what you can start doing is going, okay, let's look at some of these keywords and let's get a little bit of an understanding of what we're dealing with here. So once you've created that nice long seed list, what you're going to do is you're going to pick some out and you're going to pop them into Ahrefs. And like I said, you can skip this tool, but I always like to know what I'm up against, right? I always want to see what the landscape looks like. And as you can see, when I typed in recording studios in the United States, There's 8,800 searches. There's a score here, which is basically, you know, a 0 to 100 scale. It'll show a trend of how the search volume has progressed over the last 12 months, traffic potential, and then other terms. So terms that match the recording studios query, right? So recording studios near me, Nashville recording studios. It'll go through questions, you know, why are recording studios lined with foam? It might have some also ranked for and also talked about. Basically, these are two little sections that, you know, websites that often rank for these queries here also rank for these queries here, right? So don't get too hung up on this, but this will just kind of let you set some realistic expectations, because 99% of this content marketing fails because people think, I'm going to write an answer and then next week it doesn't rank in Google. So this whole content marketing thing doesn't work, right? And then what you're going to do is we've got the recording studio, or, you know, in this case, what is an online marketplace? Very simple. What we're going to pop it into is the Surfer SEO tool. So the report basically looks at, okay, the query, what is an online marketplace as a question. It'll give you an idea on the top 20 competitors around, on average, how many words the articles or the pages are that rank, how many headings those pages have on average, how many paragraphs, how many images. It'll all go all the way down into the commonly used terms, synonyms, all that sort of information that's sort of relevant if you're, you know, writing a piece of content. And as you start writing that piece of content, it'll actually give you a guide here. So this little dial will update your content score based on the top 20 competitors. So it's like a really neat way for you to start writing some content and get real-time feedback based on what they're seeing is already ranking, right? So these are some, you know, some very easy steps that you could literally put into action today and start producing some content that's very, very targeted to your marketplace. And so some of the resources that I talked about here, two of my favorites are always going to be Ahrefs and Backlinko. They've got great guides on things like link building, content marketing, anything sort of high level topics that we might be covering. And then again, a list of the tools that we use here. So Ahrefs, Surfer SEO, Answer to Public, and also Asked. So I know I went through this a little bit fast because there was a lot to get through, but really wanted to have this webinar here so you can reference back to it and watch it in your own time, because it'll take one or two times before you can start picking up little bits and bobs here. And it's something that I hope you guys will find very actionable and can start using straight away. That's it.
Yeah, this is really great. Thanks for walking us through there, Mike. Hey, so one thing I did want to ask you, and you know, these are a lot of great steps, by the way, as far as being actionable that we can kind of take and, you know, put it into practice. But as you know, I would say with getting started, you mentioned that a lot of people, you know, have expectations of, you know, just putting out a few pieces of content and thinking it'll rank. What do you see as far as like how much content to put out and like for how long, right, before they start seeing some initial results? And I would say just generally speaking.
So generally speaking, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. It's about consistency, right? If you're publishing 10 blog posts this month and then you go dormant for half a year and then you publish a little bit more, you're going to have a harder time ranking than if you're pushing out, even if it's one article a week. If you can produce one article a week, you'll start seeing some results over time, right? And this goes hand in hand with what you're doing on the other side of the marketplace. But, you know, you can start seeing results in months of producing this sort of content on a consistent basis.
Awesome. And would you say like a ballpark range as far as like how many pieces of content per month, you know, like 10 to 15, or is it?
No, look, I think that is way too much. You've got to be realistic, right? When you're in the early stages, you know, go for one every 2 weeks, right? And then slowly set the expectation that you're going to write one every 2 weeks. If you've got a team and you can afford to hire a writer, great, publish 2 a week. Publish, you know, we've got clients that publish 1 a day, and that's their goal, 20 blog articles a month, and that's the goal. And then combine that with the link building that we discussed in sort of the previous sessions. We've seen, you know, marketplaces, even SaaS businesses go from 100 visitors a day to sort of, you know, or 100 visitors a month to, you know, 40,000 visitors a month within a 12-month time span.
That's pretty impressive. So,
Yeah, they've done a great job, right? I would say it was all my work, but they've done all the hard yards. But yeah, they've really stuck to their schedule and consistently, even though the first 6 months it's like, it's getting there, but we're not seeing the return on investment. And now where the market has changed and valuations have changed and they're going into cap raise mode, they're able to sustain lead flow and lead generation because they turn down their paid search, but because their organic has been so strong, they're still maintaining a good level of sort of lead generation.
Well, cool. Well, if we don't have any questions, then we'll just kind of wrap things up here with this because yeah, this is a lot to take in. So really appreciate walking us through this here today, Mike. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining in that could make it today. And I'll post a recap post in the community with a little bit of notes, kind of breaking it down, and then the deck and the recording here soon.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me, and we'll look at the next session next week.
Awesome. Sounds great. And yeah, thanks everyone. And be sure to join in next week. We'll be doing part 3 of 3 for what, technical SEO?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's it.
All right. Thanks everyone.